So just to put, for my people listening, to bring this conversation back into the Black liberation context of the Rastafari movement, Black African liberation movement. This is Selassie's words about education are, I think, fundamental, and also the intention, because as I often say, in my understanding, he's very different from Sankara, who was, for example, rejecting any cooperation with past colonizers. But His Majesty has a different approach, saying that man's kinship to God must be the foundation for cooperation and peace. And that's the kind of the goal we're aiming for, and to become members of a new race, overcoming petty prejudice, and also His Majesty. But this is a subtle thing we want to talk about. So let's take the time to talk about it correctly. Even though he does explain to his students, Ethiopian students abroad, that we can maybe interpret as relevant to the diaspora and to Afro descendants, he says, let me just find this. He says to the Ethiopian students, "We do not want you to return to Ethiopia, Americans or Canadians. American techniques in their entirety may be good only in America, and Canadian training will be especially applicable to conditions in that country. We hope that you will be wise in choosing those elements from foreign education which are applicable to conditions in Ethiopia and which can be used in our country." Another quick sentence here. To those studying in England, the education and knowledge you are acquiring in England will enable you to alleviate the suffering of your country, Ethiopia, if they are enfolded in your minds in harmony with your country's tradition and character. Long story short, he says that we have to work for the benefit of others, that if we go study abroad, it is very important to come back to Africa and to bring that knowledge, but not take anything from the Western education. That's the subtlety of this quote. Very important. To be wise enough to choose what will benefit Ethiopia. And I in Ethiopia here, Africa as well. Yeah.
Yeah, we were talking about this before when saying about the continuity of the ancient tradition and this new time and this new knowledge, because there are several different kinds of knowledge. Wisdom, the spiritual wisdom is the formal knowledge that is good, for the ancient tradition, for the experience of the ancient people. The modern time got another different kind of knowledge, that is the scientific knowledge. And education is dealing mainly with this scientific and fleshical conception of knowledge that is proper for the ethical side. And we must master both the spiritual wisdom and the scientific modern knowledge, because they are one. And the spiritual wisdom also is this historical truth, is the historical root of the truth that is development in the following stages of knowledge. For either science has been created, the scientific method, by philosophical tools, and the philosophers took their fundamental and basic concepts from the religions and the theological elaboration and interpretation. So the root of the scientific modern knowledge is the spiritual wisdom, and it works as a good foundation for the scientific knowledge. So the same is for the adapting of the new knowledge of the Western world to the ancient wisdom of Ethiopia. This merging should not be performed with rush and without sense of continuity. It should not create an inner contradiction, but it should give more power to the ends and principles of wisdom.
I just want to talk a second about the preservation of Ethiopian culture and traditions. Here I read, Ethiopia is a country with her own cultures and more. These, our cultures and customs, more than being the legacy of our historical past, are characteristics of our Ethiopianness. We do not want our legacies and traditions to be lost. Our wish and desire is that education develop, enrich, and modify them. Just to bring back this concern for preserving the ancestral heritage, Ethiopian cultural heritage, while bringing Ethiopia into the modern world. This is the subtle special intention of His Majesty's educational system.
Yeah, to introduce the modern way of thinking, the modern age. Because if His Majesty is Christ and is coming in the coming of His kingdom, therefore there's a new age, and the most noble meaning of this expression, and a new age, a new time, a new epoch. And His Majesty speaks about this also. He speaks clearly about the fact that a new time, a new epoch of the history of Ethiopia is opening now, and the spiritual foundation for the understanding of this new time, a new system, is education.
To touch on another point, that's a foundation that we didn't talk about yet, is agriculture, because the next part of the first speech on higher education, if I'm not mistaken, talks about agriculture. Let me just quote here: "Even in this nuclear age, in spite of the revolutionary changes in man's way of life, which science has brought about, the problem of future improving and perfecting agricultural methods continues to hold a position of high priority for the human race. It is hard to believe that a substitute can ever be found for the occupation of agriculture, a sacred task graciously conferred upon man by God, to serve as the source of his well-being and the basis of his wealth." He goes on by explaining how Ethiopia has a natural abundance and that has enough to produce for itself, but also to share and exchange with other countries. So education, I'm just trying to link all what we're saying with the importance of also the agricultural field and natural sciences and
Yeah, of course. We have said that the foundation of the world building is the spiritual element, is education. But after the plan for the house is drafted and filed, and everything is conceived with science, and we put the foundation of a solid building, the first thing we put upon is the ground floor. the ground floor of the building should be agriculture. For the next priority after the spiritual priority of spiritual food and mental food is the physical food to give life unto the body. So His Majesty say, man cannot live by bread alone, and it applies this passage of the Bible also to education and to agriculture, because he says education gives food for the spirit and the intellect, and the same way that agriculture gives food to the body through bread. So agriculture should also conceive the source and the basis of the whole productive system. So His Majesty teaches that among the physical activities of the state, agriculture is the source, is the basis for the industrial elaboration and for the commercial distribution. Because from agriculture, from the exploitation of the natural dominion of the kingdom, we gain the raw materials to create everything and to do everything.
Yeah.
And so, it should occupy also the most wide part of the productive system, the productive work of the state. And during the time of His Majesty, the visible kingdom of His Majesty, around 19% of the world territory was used for agricultural purposes, and that is the only way to respect the environment, to not pollute the environment, to keep the people of the nation grounded through a good relation, an harmonic relation with creation. While here, where the people is accustomed to live very, very high, very detached from the ground, and the same is for their spirits. They are very detached, from the contact and the real experience of nature. While, the priority of agricultural activities give us the opportunity to keep this link with nature, with creation, and also to have a very, very solid economical system.
Yeah, thank you. Because regarding economic development in Ethiopia, which is still very much a priority, Ethiopia still has to develop economically as well as the rest of Africa, whether we like it or not. But I guess what His Majesty is reminding us is, about the important resources, natural resources that we have. To come back to natural resources in Africa being the main source for economic development. I have two very important quotes here. First of all, commerce and industry, being concerned in the main with production and distribution, can only develop and profit from existing resources, but cannot actually create things which did not exist before. So, just saying that, Africa having all these resources has the basis for commerce and industry. But only when a solid agricultural base has been laid for our country's commercial and industrial growth can we ensure the attainment of the ultimate goal of our development program. So a solid agricultural base. Finally, agriculture and industry are indispensable one to the other. This is just a comment to those who would think that going out, living off the grid and farming, being self-sufficient is what His Majesty is talking about. Sadly, not. Because, he might be, but let me just read you this other quote Because, if everybody is living off the grid and self-sufficient, how does that contribute to the economic development?
No, of course.
Right? So this next quote is particularly important. To see the world as His Majesty sees it from a governmental point of view, and this will allow us to become responsible citizens, in my opinion. So, I quote, "Agriculture and industry are indispensable one to the other. Only close cooperation between these two branches of knowledge can guarantee the fulfillment of our program of economic development for our country." So, in the agro industry isn't something to be rejected completely, because it's part of, feeding the nation is a must. It doesn't have to be done in a way that pollutes the earth and, exhausts its resources. But there still has to be an effort made in developing the agricultural and industry for African economic development.
Of course, all the activities of the state are essential. There's no field that is without usefulness. So even commerce is very essential for the industrial elaboration. For if you cannot distribute the material, how can you do things and how you can achieve any result? So all the parts, all the fields and the functions of the state, and the government of the kingdom are essential, and we must keep the balance between all the parts in harmony. But there's a logic order in the productive system, and the chief activity is agriculture. For that is the starting point of the process of physical creation through work. For the starting point is the raw material that we can draw from the earth. So in the same way as higher education is the starting point of the process of the spiritual and mental food, for it creates the new ideas and intellectual tendencies through the educational performance. In the same way, agriculture from the bottom creates physical wealth. So, of course, each part of the state must be respected fully, but there's a logic order, and His Majesty says also that agriculture must be the chief in among the productive fields.
Yeah.
And that is very, very crucial. That is very crucial because in the West we have the contrary. We have, an industrial development that is wider than the agricultural resources and power of the state. And we have a lot of financial speculational activities like banking movements and Wall Street, and we have a very, very virtual and fragile economy that you see that is crumbling down.
Mm-hmm. But one might say that that Africa is still behind because it's very much, in the primary sector. I just wanna reason about that idea, because how Selassie says agriculture is not only the chief amongst, but also the first to other industrial development. So let us look at a second.
Yeah, the first
of other industrial development. But today, agriculture in Africa, anyways, where I'm in Benin right now, I can't say it's correctly developed, in the sense that it's still, first of all, a majority of the agricultural activities are done for exportation, raw material exportation for exotic fruits and foods like cacao, coffee, and pineapple, sugar cane, and palm oil, so that's hugely developed, and that's been, we know, subsidized by, by the Western countries and encouraged. But how does that agriculture really serve the people, the people's needs? It doesn't, because, first of all, for example, there's so much pineapple in Benin. There's so much pineapple that the pineapple costs absolutely nothing. Here, at 20 cents, you have a beautiful pineapple. So you see, because of the way the agriculture was made by the IFM and the World Bank and the structural adjustments projects and requirements for loans. I'm just going to remind people about this, but that the IFM, when giving loans to countries, when they were becoming new nations and independent, they said, okay, we'll give you money, but you have to produce this and that to be able to incorporate the international commerce. So they forced countries to produce cacao, cash crops. But in the end, that's not what's l'agriculture vivrière, which means what actually feeds the people. On that side of things, the agriculture here is very poorly developed. It exists, but it's completely informal. And yeah, for example, tomatoes, cucumbers, onions, it's completely informal. You still don't have, for example, legislation on the use of pesticides, the use of organic and stuff. So I think that's what has to be developed as a firm.
There are many problems for sure. Yeah.
No, but as a firm agricultural base, let us not mistake the agricultural base that's serving exportation only as that agricultural base, I think, that His Majesty speaks about, because
of course. We are talking about.
Yeah, and also I just want to remind the people that it's all about transforming raw material in Africa to be able to create added value and profit that stays in African soil, and not only, for example, Swiss chocolate, where you got cacao that's made by children slaves in Ivory Coast and then ends up sold, fortunes in Switzerland. I think the agriculture, that's what His Majesty is saying when agriculture and industry must go hand in hand. It's, for example, we have to produce our chocolates in Africa with the industry. Industry is also that's capable of transforming. I think that's the guidance I'm hearing here. And all this, of course, is possible through education only.
The only thing I desire to say is that we of course we find many problems we should face for the African development, but we should respect the political and productive system of Africa that are agriculturally orientated. For that is a better way to relate with the environment. The traditional economical system of African states is the same that makes Africa able to be more clean and more more virgin in territory and land resources and even the African lifestyle more clean than the Western one that is highly polluted through industrial aggression. So that is the sense of what I'm talking about.
I was reading in the Bible the other day about in Leviticus about the fact that in the Promised Land people couldn't sell land. Even if you sold land after the Jubilee, it would come back to the original owner, just to keep lands in God's people's ownership, because this is God's people. So I think there's also an issue, which Ethiopia is particularly inspiring in her way still with dealing with the Saudi Arabians and the Chinese who want to rebuy Ethiopian land. They still have a proactive, spirit of protecting and keeping the land.
Of course, that has been enforced by His Majesty through his law regarding concerning these things. For you cannot buy anything in Ethiopia as regards land, territory, and estates. You cannot buy any land without being an Ethiopian citizen with full Ethiopian citizenship. So the stranger can just rent, but cannot buy, cannot own. And this is very, very clever indeed. So there is a tradition of protection, of legal protection from the colonial and stranger penetration and aggressions that can happen, of course, along the history. And of course, His Majesty is a guiding star even in these matters, in this field of African independence. In His Majesty is kept also the example of a balanced way between protection of the African identity and peaceful cooperation with the strangers and even the former colonialists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, asking us to cooperate, asking the African people to cooperate with former colonizers. And on that matter, I wanna, His Majesty cooperated with a lot of strangers, people from other countries, in the establishment of the university. He received funds from Americans and from Britons, which he thanked, so he thanked those collaborations. For example, he thanks at some point, I quote here, "We sincerely thank the U.S. government for its assistance in the establishment of this school. We also appreciate the good words expressed by the U.S. ambassador for the spirit of cooperation he has shown." Yeah.
We can even find a speech about the Technical Institute of Bardar that was created with the head of the Soviet Union.
Mm-hmm.
So you can find even here the perfect balance and opening of His Majesty to any kind of foreign cooperation, but without, as His Majesty say, any political
influence.
Tie.
Yeah, tie. Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. For example, in his school, there were foreign teachers to teach foreign languages and foreign subjects, but mostly Ethiopian teachers, but also foreign teachers, just to, he wasn't against cooperation with the West, which is, I think, an important aspect, even though...
the university university has been built thanks to the efforts of Lucien Matte, that was a Jesuit from Canada. So something important for you also. And I think it is a good example, a good instance of what we are talking about, of mental opening and personal diplomacy also, and tolerance.
So, His Majesty says, he who would be a leader must pay the price in self-discipline and moral restraint. This entails the correction and improvement of personal character, the checking of passions and desires, and an exemplary control of one's bodily needs and drives. Leaders have to submit themselves to a stricter self-discipline and develop a more exemplary moral character than is expected of others. To be first in place, one must be first in merit as well.
Merit.
Yeah.
True.
So I guess that's just the essence of this inspiration from His Majesty. That we may always better ourselves because education never stops, and that's it. There's a lot more to cover, but I will simply end on these words that he uses to encourage people who have not yet completed their studies. He says the message of St. Paul, who looks back, having once put his hand to the plow. These words remind us as well of the need for more universities, for more teachers and more schools, more students, and more work.
The most amazing thing is that these words are not from St. Paul, but they are from the Gospel of Luke. So that is a very educational notion, a very, very deep knowledge notion for the Gospel of Luke, of the evangelist Luke, written through the teaching of St. Paul, for Luke was a disciple of St. Paul. So His Majesty is saying this is the message of St. Paul.
Yeah, and it's all about cultivating that inner field, that inner once it's plowing the land of our inner spirit, inner character, and we live not only by bread alone, but also by the word of God and of truth.
Yeah.
Voila, my brother.
And educational work is very similar to the agricultural work. Culture and agriculture are connected, are related, and we can see that one is the image of the other. So even for the educator, it is necessary to toil the soil of mind, to disseminate ideas like seeds, and even to give water and to give food, and also at the end of the process to gather also fruits and to feed himself with those fruits.
And also to remember, as we explore our education and knowledge, always to remember the roots and culture and the service, to put the knowledge in the service of the development of Ayanai Nation, Ethiopia, the protection of Mother Earth, and promotion of equal rights and justice and prosperity for all people on the earth.
That's true.
And that's it. So, my people, thank you for listening. We explored some aspects of this huge topic that is education in His Majesty's philosophy. So we just touched on some inspiring concepts. So stay tuned for the next episodes. Tekle, thank you for your time and your reasoning.
Give thanks, Joe. Rastafari, Xavier.
Rastafari, Almighty I. It's a fountain of learning, like he says. Universities are a fountain of learning, and we never stop learning. So So let us pursue on.
Give thanks. For sure. Haile Selassie.
Guidance and protection. Selassie the First. Blessed love.